Being an Aussie, I know of a lot of bands that have hit the charts here in Australia, but have never really made an impact outside of the country. You know, that's such a shame, because we've got some great music here that most of the world has never really heard of. Well, I guess you could say that for just about any country in the world. From John Farnham, one of our greatest vocalists, to other one-album wonders like Roxas, a personal favourite of mine, and one that I'll cover in the future, to the incredible Jessica Mauboy, or to the early rock stars like Johnny O'Keefe. Australia has a great musical legacy, and a fantastic future to boot. So today I'm going to check out a group that released only one album, but had hits with it, before they disbanded and disappeared into the pages of history. But before I do, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and definitely leave a comment. And a shout out to my subscribers, including Smith Chicks, my first ever subscriber, the Savage Boys, Dover Dude, Patrick Campbell, Matt Burr, Kush White, and Kent Madigan. Thanks to all of you for joining me on this journey. You're noticed and appreciated. So let's go back to the year 2000. Y2K has come and gone, and music is creeping out of the darkness of the 90s and starting to find its melody again. And here in Australia, a group headed up by a trio of brothers hit the charts with 3 hits. You might not have heard of them before, or maybe I'm about to reawaken some of your memories. Either way, they're worth a look into their musical legacy. The band, Invertigo. Let's get into Should Have Been on the Album. Should have been on the album. Invertigo is actually the story of 2 bands, one called Vertigo and then later Invertigo. Both were formed by the Lee brothers, Jerry on guitar, James on keyboards and Vince on drums. James and Vince had previously been members of Pseudo Echo, famous for their version of Funky Town. As Vertigo, they released 2 singles with singer Hugh Wilson, with Forever Lately hitting the top 40. However, they disbanded in 1999 after the brothers had a falling out with Wilson. But come 2000, they were back with a new singer, Christian Argenti, and a slightly modified band name, Invertigo. In June of 2000, their debut single Desensitized reached the top 30. Then in December, they released their highest charting single, Chances Are, which peaked at number 19. A third single, Say You Do, appeared in the top 40 in June 2001, with a 4th video shot for Man Enough, a song that was never officially released as a single. Their only album, Forum, was released soon after, and it reached number 11 on the ARIA's album chart. It was produced by Charles Fisher, who also produced Savage Garden. They signed a record deal in America with Atlantic Records, and went on to promote the album. In 2001 and 2002, they were nominated for the ARIA Music Awards and the APRA Awards for the songs Chances Are, Desensitized, and Say You Will. But longevity wasn't in their future, and in 2003, the band was no more after Argenti left the... And that's about it. 2 of the band members now run a music school, Christian became a professional radio presenter, and the story of the band comes to an end. But they've left behind the legacy of a great album, and a little B-side that was placed on the flip of their 3rd single, Say You Do. Mr. Right was written by James Lee, Vincent Lee, and Christian Argenti, and was produced by Charles Fisher, who also produced the Forum album. It's one of the few tracks that James and Vincent co-wrote with other people for the album, and the only one I can find that Argenti wrote for the band. It was recorded around the same time as the album, but was left off for no apparent reason. I wonder if it was because all the songs on the album were written by the Lee brothers, and they wanted to keep Argenti outside of the songwriting team. But I'm merely speculating. Lyrically, the song flips the idea of who Mr. Right might be, with the protagonist of the song saying that it's definitely not him.
If you were looking for the answers to your prayers, I don't think I can ease your mind, 'cause there's no angel here.
This guy isn't sugarcoating anything.
If you want someone who will catch you when you fall, then move away, 'cause it ain't safe just knowing me at all.
Well, at least he's being honest about it, right? The ultimate challenge from him comes in the chorus, where he lays it all down.
Said I was Mr. Right.
What's interesting about this song is that it's almost an anti-love song. The singer makes no allusions to who he is, and is almost trying to convince his romantic partner, if you can call that romance, that he's never going to be her soulmate. Ouch. Talk about brutal self-honesty. Musically, there's an excellent pop rock sensibility about the track, with a self-assured swagger from the group. The band are perfectly in sync, and there's not a scrap of fat on the tight and punchy mix. The instrumental in the middle of the track breaks up the sonic palette nicely and adds an extra layer of nuance to it. But what makes the song stand out is just how concise and clean the delivery is. It doesn't sound like a cast-off track or B-side at all. It feels like all due care was taken with the song, from conception to final mix. The content of the song may be all about not being the right one, but the song itself does everything exactly spot on. So it's clear that I think the song should have been on Forum, but where does it fit and what should go? As always, we keep the singles. And in this case, the singles are definitely the cream of the crop. What If It's Me is another great slice of pristine pop rock and another highlight of the album. While If I rounds off the first half on a gentler, reflective note, something that the album could probably do a little bit more of. Side 1 is very strong and makes the album worth the price of purchase alone. That brings us to the second half, and this is where things go a little bit off track. Blame It on the Stars has a great melody and a great chorus hook, but it's a little clumsy lyrically. It's Getting Personal demonstrates a harder edge to the band, yet maintains the excellent level of songwriting, even if the lyrics are again somewhat forced. Slave shows the band experimenting with different sounds and hints at further musical depth, beyond the polished veneer displayed on the majority of the album. And lastly, the album finishes with a 1-2... wet fish slap. Unfortunately, Typical and Damage Control do not end the album on a high. Typical is the longest song on the album, and sadly it seems to drag on for more than 5 minutes. Damage Control has a lot more of a pulse and is one of the shorter tracks, but lacks a convincing hook to help it take flight. It also feels like they try to cobble together two very different songs. Both songs ultimately feel like they're trying too hard. It's as if the band started to run out of ideas and limped to the finish line. So there's two options here. Option 1. Put Mr. Right as the last song on the album. There's only 11 tracks on Forum, so there's room aplenty for a number 12. Mr. Right would be a great way to finish Forum. Or option 2. Get rid of one of the last two songs and put in the much better Mr. Right. It's superior to both Typical and Damage Control and deserves to be placed on the album. For my money, I'm dumping Damage Control just over Typical and keeping the album at 11 tracks. It would cut the runtime a little, sure, but much like the band, the album is here for a good time and not a long time. Invertigo is a classic example of a band that finished too soon. And with such a promising debut, it's such a shame that they couldn't continue. Regardless, they left behind some great music that every pop fan should check out, including the B-sides. So, what's your take? And what do you think of the band? Let me know in the comments below. And if you know of a B-side or non-album track that deserves a look, clue me in. It may just become the focus of an upcoming video. But until next time, my name is Drew, and you've been watching Should Have Been on the Album. Cheers.
What made you fail?